All right, so we are back with Exodus chapter 16, still second book of the Bible, 16th chapter. We're going to cover the entire chapter. That is a full 36 verses. So we left off before in 15 where God has already started to show the Israelites, these escaped slaves that have kind of come out into this wilderness and have succeeded in being fully freed when the army of Pharaoh was destroyed at the Red Sea. So they are now kind of experiencing life in the wilderness. And God is starting to show them that He can provide for them and take care of them. So in chapter 16, it starts off after they've had this bitter water made sweet so they can drink. God is starting to show them He is control. He controls the nature. He controls everything. And He can make it work for them if they just follow the instructions that He's given. And so chapter 16 starts off with them complaining. They are complaining again. They are out here and they are saying that they're hungry. They're hungry. We don't have no food. We didn't pack for this travel. We don't have what we need. We are hungry. And when they complain to Moses because Moses is the one that God used to free them. So instead of taking their concerns to God, instead of saying, Lord, I need your help. We are hungry. We're in the wilderness. We're relying on you. We need you to come through. They go to Moses. And in verse 3, it says, would it have been if we had just died in Egypt? Like, why did you bring us out into the wilderness for us to starve to death? There was food where we were. We had bread and meat, and like you brought us all the way out here to starve us. Like, why wouldn't you just set us free in Egypt? Like, they're trying to put conditions on the freedom. They're trying to change the plan that God had, because what they see is, you could have just made it so that we were free in Egypt and we could have kept all the things that we had that were good and got rid of all the stuff that was bad. And one thing we need to understand and know about God is not concerned with our comfort in a situation. He's concerned with the overall big picture that sometimes we miss. Like, He wants you to have things. He wants you to be blessed. He wants to meet all of your needs. He is aware that you have a need for food and for shelter. He's aware that you have these needs, but He's also aware that you can survive a little bit. Like, you can deal with some things. You may not have, steak every day. You might have a little peanut butter and jelly and ramen noodles, but He's still making sure that your needs are met while He's working you to a place where He's developed you as a person to where you can stand and have steak and not be pretentious. You can stand and have steak and still talk to the person who is surviving through their ramen noodle phase and be able to minister them and tell them, like, this is where God brought me from. So sometimes He's building your testimony because it's not about you. It's about the other person that's coming behind you. And so I want to point out that this is the 15th day of the second month. So when a lot of people talk about this journey into Egypt and this journey from Egypt and how it could have been done in 2 weeks or 40 days or any of these other numbers, it was never designed to be a quick travel, because they were escaped slaves. They had to rid themselves of the slave mentality. They had been spending years crying out to God. They had not ever lived under the provision of God in this recognizable kind of way that we're getting ready to see, where God is meeting their needs personally. So God had to work out the culture and traditions and habits and behaviors that were not like Him from this group of people that He has chosen. And he's got to work all that out. So this journey and the length of time, the 40 years is a punishment. We're going to get to that. But the length of time that this journey is taking was not just to get them from point A to point B. It was to spiritually, emotionally, and mentally develop this group of slaves into free thinking, freestanding, free will, surrendered, listening, and focused and believers of God. Okay, so in verse 4, it says that God told Moses that He's going to rain bread from heaven to feed the people. And He's like, look, I'm going to give them rules. They have to follow the rules. And if they do, everything will be well. I'm going to take care of them. God is promising that he's literally going to rain down food for them every day. They don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from because God is going to feed them by hand every day. Not a bird going to bring it. Not they're going to have to go hunt, and I'll make sure there's animals out there to hunt. But literally, God is going to rain down bread from heaven every day. And so what he gives them the instructions on in the next few verses is that if they follow the rules, all will be well. Everything will work fine. So their requirement is to get enough to collect. He's going to rain down this manna from heaven. And it's going to be when the dew clears, it's going to be like this flaky meal on the ground that they can scoop up and gather. And as they gather it, get enough for your household for the day. Enough for your household for the day. And at the end of the day, if there's anything left, throw it out. Don't keep it. Every morning, their food is going to be there. Every morning, it's going to be there. And on the night before the Sabbath, the day before the Sabbath, collect enough for 2 days for your household. And only on the night before the Sabbath will that food stay. If you keep it and you're not supposed to keep it, so on a regular Tuesday afternoon, if you don't get rid of the leftover, if you gather too much, it's going to rot overnight. It's not going to be any good. But on the night before the Sabbath, whether it's Friday or Saturday, depending on your personal understanding of how they recognize the Sabbath here, either that Friday night or that Saturday night, the food that you keep over that night will stay so that you're not going to go out. You can rest on the Sabbath. You would already have food in hand. You wouldn't have to go out and gather anything. You wouldn't have to do that kind of work. And so God gives them the instructions and all they have to do is follow them. Every morning I'm going to feed you. Trust me is the lesson here. Trust me. Every morning. If you get rid of what you have at night and you are empty and there is no food in your house, understand that I got you. I'm going to make sure it's there in the morning. Could you imagine? Like, this is so powerful to me because literally God said, do not worry about what you're going to eat. I know you're going to be hungry in the morning. I know breakfast time is coming and I want you to empty your pantry. I want you to have absolutely nothing on hand because I'm going to feed you every day. And then on the day that I tell you to rest, I'm going to make it so you can rest. I'm going to make sure you have food. All you got to do is collect enough for 2 days on the day before. And I'm going to keep it. Now, if you do anything outside of this, you try and keep it on your own, it's not going to work. I'm going to keep it. That's a lesson in trust. And it seems like this would have been enough to break you. If I go out every morning and I see that God has literally rained food from heaven for me, I think I'm going to trust him a little differently than I would. Like, I'd be like, oh, don't even worry about the water drying up. It's all right. God got us. He's going to bring us some water as soon as we get thirsty. Because that's what he's showing them. And so he gives them the instructions. Moses tells Aaron to tell the people, this is what I need. God has heard you complaining, and he's going to send you this. And so God says, look, not only do I hear that they're complaining about this, I'm going to send them quail. I'm going to send them a little bird. You can have your little personal chicken. A quail is just a smaller like game bird. So if you're not familiar with it, it's like having a little personal chicken. It's a little personal size chicken. And you're going to have this food. You're going to be able to make your bread. You're going to have a little pita, little chicken salad. Do what you need to do with what you have. You can roast this thing. You can, whatever you got to do. You can grill it up. So, you can make a meal with this. And I'm going to send you quail in the evenings, and I'm going to send you this manna in the mornings, and your needs are going to be met. And so the people go out and they collect the food. And the first thing that some of them do is get a whole lot and try and store it up. So they'll already have what they need for the next day. And God was like, I told y'all don't do that. I'm going to feed you every day. It's not going to last. And the food rotted. Like overnight it would rot, and it says that there were worms. Like it was gross. Like overnight it just could not keep. Follow the instructions that God gave you. If he says that I'm going to meet your needs, trust that he's going to meet your needs. Do not decide that God can't do it this way. He can't do it. He can't do it the way he's saying it. It's impossible. Nothing's impossible for God. And so in verse 20 is where it says that. So they were supposed to collect an omer. An omer is a tenth, and it's just I won't say prehistoric, but it's an ancient, that's a better word, measurement tool. We don't use this currently. I don't know if other countries still hold on to it, but it's not one that I'm familiar with. So it's a biblical measurement. So it's like getting enough. It's like getting a packet of oatmeal. It's like getting, a cup worth of flour. Like that's the way this is being measured out. And so in verse 20, it says, they hearkened not unto Moses. They didn't listen. They didn't listen. But some of them left it until morning, and it bred worms and it stank, and Moses was angry with them. He said, at the end of the day, throw it away. Don't keep it. And they was like, I don't know if God gonna be here tomorrow. So they kept it, and it rotted and it stank, and it was a mess. And he was like, just listen. Just listen. That's it. Just listen. Y'all was over there listening to these Egyptians, and that's how y'all stayed in slavery. Just turn your listening ears back on. Stop trying to fight with God. And so then they've learned at that point to go out and gather it every morning. Get it in the morning, because if you wait and you don't get it in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, as the sun gets high, that it would just melt away. God gave you a specific rules and specific times for you to get this together. Do what he said. And so on the sixth day or the day before the Sabbath, they were instructed to get 2 omers per man. So there's enough for each household. There's enough for each person in the household for 2 days. And then, of course, there were some people that didn't do that. They were like, God will bring me, he'll send some tomorrow. I'll collect a little bit tomorrow. It'll be okay. And when they went, they didn't have anything. But the people who listened had enough food, because for that night, the food wouldn't rot. For that night, the food didn't turn and stink, and there was no worms and there was no issues. For that night, everything was okay. And so those people who were obedient were able to rest easy, because their food was already prepared. Everything they needed was already done. But those people that didn't listen and didn't collect the double amount was hungry all day. All day they were hungry. And so the name manna they gave, and it says, it was like coriander seed. It was white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. So there is a designated taste and flavor for this. It was good. It was something that was nice. Wafers made with honey. I don't really know what that tastes like. I can imagine that it would be, a little sweet. It's nice. But this is not like some magical food that whatever you want it to taste like, it's going to taste like. It has its own flavor. But it was nutritious. It met all of their vitamin and nutrition needs. It made sure it had all of the elements that were supposed to be there, so they would continue to have healthy bodies. Because this is their primary source of food for the next 40-something years. They are able to, off of this manna, full adults are able to be healthy and whole, and full children are able to be healthy and whole, and full mothers are able to get pregnant, successfully make it through pregnancies, nurse, and then wean children onto this manna. This was a food source that was sound and provided the nutrition they needed. God knew what your bodies needed, and he provided it. Okay, so verses 32 through 36 really just give an understanding that this is one of the things. They asked him to fill an omer and place it and to keep it so that there is proof that manna existed. That is a remembrance tool for the people of God, so that as they move beyond this wilderness phase, that there is a reminder to them that their God fed them by hand every day. And all they had to do was follow his instructions. And they were easy instructions. Collect the food in the morning. Don't keep it overnight. Unless it's on the 6th day, collect double, store the extra, and all will be well. So we're going to recap, and then we're going to get on out of here. So Exodus chapter 16 starts off with them kind of wandering through the wilderness. They're upset because they're hungry. They did not pack for, this long time that they've been out in the wilderness. There's not a lot of food sources. They're like in the wilderness. They're not, they're not planting crops and farming and things like that. So they're hungry. And so they cry out to Moses, and they're like, hey, Moses, why you bring us out here to die? Like, you could have left us in Egypt. We had food in Egypt. And it's really easy sometimes. It's really easy to look back and see only the good in a situation. And we need to be very careful we're not doing that. I got to see Dr. Anita Phillips speak, and she said this one time, and I will never forget it. Do not let a bad desert, a rough wilderness, make a worse Egypt look good. They were slaves. They were slaves. They were literally just chased down by an army. And already they were like, oh, we were in Egypt. We could eat good. Don't let the hunger in your belly cancel the freedom you feel. Don't let simple, small things. And I know being hungry is not always a small thing, but don't let that thing put you back in bondage. Like, make sure that we're not looking back with rose-colored glasses and like really see the situation for what it was. They didn't want to be slaves. They even spent 400 years calling out to God for freedom. And they were getting ready to undo it because of a rumble in their tummy. And so, God is always just at his limit with these children of his. And so they're complaining against Moses because they're like, Moses, you let us out here. They didn't even go to God with prayer. Remember, go to God in prayer and ask him to help you. Ask him to provide for you. God is a good father. He will do that. And so God was like, look, I got a plan for that. Don't even worry. What I'm getting ready to do is rain bread down from heaven. I'm going to send quail in the evening so they can have a little meat. I know they're hungry. Put a little chicken on your belly. And then I'm going to send down this bread from heaven, and they're able to collect it each morning. But my instructions are collect only enough for for each person once a day. For one day, I'm going to start that over so it's clear. Collect only enough for each person in the house to have for one day. And at the end of the day, if there's anything left, throw it out because it's not going to be any good. And every morning, I'm going to give you a new supply. Now, on the 6th day, the day before the Sabbath, I want you to collect a double portion for everybody because on the Sabbath, I'm a rest and you're going to rest too. So there's not going to be any food to collect because I'm not sending it and you're not picking it up. And so on that night, only on that night, did the food stay overnight so that they could have it the next day. And so God does. He says he's going to do it, and then he does it. He provides them manna and quail. And the people, of course, don't follow the rules. So there's a handful of people that want to be obstinate. And so that group of people try and keep it overnight, and it rots, and it stinks, and there's bugs in it, and it's a mess. And now you in this camp in close quarters, and you got rotten food around. And so they have to throw it out, and it's a problem. Like, you should have listened and did what God said and get enough for the day and get rid of the rest. And then on the Sabbath, there are people who did not follow the instruction and gather double portions for every person in the household the day before. And so they're hungry because they don't have what they're supposed to have. So following God's instructions is important, okay? Make sure if God asks you to do a thing, do it the way he said it. Don't do it the way you want to. Don't try and shortcut because God has a plan for the reason why he's asking you to do it. And you're going to have to keep redoing it anyways if you don't do it right. So let's make sure we are being obedient to the word, the word and the voice of God. Y'all be blessed.